Welcome to Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by Hot Springs County Travel and Tourism. Reminding you that as temperatures fall and snow is on the horizon at Thermopolis, you can always find yourself in some hot water. Well, changes are coming. The questions remain. But in the meantime, everybody, including those on four legs, really enjoying this beautiful December weather for most of the West right now. The exception is for anybody that's watching this podcast along the West Coast where you're getting some rain and some clouds. But elsewhere across the Rockies and the adjacent high plains, just some beautiful December weather. And that's going to continue here for a little bit longer. Now, we are going to see rain and snow along the West Coast. California will be wet. And into the Great Basin, we're going to see some areas of rain showers and snow showers developing. Down into Arizona, New Mexico, some showers developing as well. But most of the central and northern Rockies and the northern plains through Friday will continue with this very nice mild weather pattern. Now, our confidence, I'm afraid to say, remains very low on the details with this change coming this weekend. And we'll show you why. It's a very complicated scenario of two storms merging into one. And the computer modeling is never very good in these situations. And you really complicate these merging storms over the fact that we've got a lot of, mountains around, a lot of terrain that interrupts the wind flow patterns. And that terrain can really wreak havoc with the modeling and sometimes fool the modeling into solutions that may or may not be correct. And I think that's exactly the situation we're finding ourselves in as we head into this Christmas Eve weekend. Regardless of what ends up happening, we are going to have travel concerns. It's really just a matter, is this going to be a nuisance situation for some, or is this going to turn into a larger storm scenario? And that's something that we've got to keep an eye on. In the meantime, very mild weather is going to continue in most areas, except along the coast and in the southwest, through the next 3 days, through Friday. Then it's the changing weather coming this weekend. More beautiful photos coming in, some great lenticular clouds over the Bighorn Mountains there, and just beautiful sunrises and sunsets with just nice December weather, feeling more like October out there than December. The satellite photos are pretty busy this morning with a very impressive low spinning off the coast of California. This is the part of the two-part system, we'll call this system number 2, that we're going to be watching. System number 1 is associated with this guy right up here coming off the Aleutians. And it's these two systems, even though they're far apart, working together this weekend that is causing the issues with the forecast. As we showed you yesterday, look at that pipeline of moisture from Hawaii coming up into Mexico, and some of this moisture will get pushed into the southern and southwestern areas of the United States. Two jet streams, which is what happens when you get into an El Nino situation sometimes, especially as the El Nino is maturing, which it's doing right now. So there's the low off the California coast, just spinning around. The counterclockwise spin is drawing that Pacific moisture, pushing it right into the higher terrain of California's coastal mountains and coastal areas in Sierra Nevada. Just a great way to get it wet there and bring needed rain. And that will continue today and into tomorrow and part of Friday. We have a big blocking high in the North Atlantic that is kind of log jamming things a little bit. That's complicating the scenario as well. Through Friday morning. This is through Friday morning where the precipitation is expected to fall. Very wet on the West Coast. Those showers that we talked about moving into Arizona, New Mexico, the Four Corners region here, getting into portions of the Interstate 80 of Nevada. Going to see a little bit of snow shower activity break out later this week over the Yellowstone Plateau, but lots of white elsewhere. Rain breaking out in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, due to that pipeline of moisture I showed you coming all the way across the Pacific. Now, as we get into this merger of storm systems, this is where we find ourselves on Friday. That low that was back up here moves very quickly just off the coast of Portland and Seattle here, with the California low still there. It's pretty amazing. Here it is today. For 2 full days, it only just slides down to just off the coast of San Diego. So that gives time for this guy to catch up. So as we go into the period beyond Friday, where these two systems are still separated, it's still going to be quite warm Friday out ahead of this system here as warmer air off the Pacific gets pushed in. But this is where things have to come together for the storm to become a major winter system, or let's say a winter system that's going to be causing some concerns. So we have system number 1 here, system number 2 here. And what'll happen? There are 2 scenarios. One scenario is one dives southeast as number 2 heads northeast. And then both systems become basically one, with a closed low system trying to form over Colorado by late Saturday into Sunday. If that scenario happens, then many of you are going to see snow, especially on Christmas Eve, Sunday, into Monday morning, and it's going to be much, much colder. And the coverage of the snow will cover a lot of areas, from Colorado to Wyoming and Utah through the South Dakota, Nebraska area, maybe North Dakota as well, and out across the plains, and end up becoming a fairly significant Midwestern storm as we get just beyond Christmas Day. But there's another scenario, is that these two don't come together at all. That system number 1 continues east, and they basically stay separate entities. This guy heads east, goes across southern Canada. Number 2 does come through, but it doesn't get energized, because when you put 2 waves together, they amplify. If the waves stay apart, they'll just maintain where they're at, but they've got to cross the mountains, and basically they'll weaken. So we could either have a weakened storm or one that gets more consolidated and more put together. And this is what you see by noon Saturday. The European model is trying to merge this one with this one, but there's still 2 separate entities, but there's a connection here to this low up here. So this low could pull this low this way instead of allowing it to cut loose and go this way. And this is at the same time it's crossing the Continental Divide. A lot of interruption in the wind flow from the mountains. And keep in mind, computer modeling cannot get every nook and cranny of every mountain range. We can't make the mountains too specific or too detailed in modeling. The mountains are just kind of more of like Lincoln logs. They're not a lot of detail in them, and that detail can make a big difference. And so it's a complicated scenario of whether or not it merges, whether or not they stay apart at the same time it crosses the Continental Divide. This is kind of a nightmare for modeling. And so what'll happen is we have 3 different scenarios, and these look very similar to what we showed you yesterday. The European tries to consolidate the lows by Christmas Eve morning on Sunday. Tries to get them together. As you can see, there's a closed circulation forming if you look at the wind bars. There's a separation between that and the low that's up here up in the south central areas of Canada. The Canadian model is better organized, and this has been a trend in the Canadian model, trying to hold it together, merge them completely, pinch it off here, and then if the Canadian model is correct, this would turn into a much larger significant system, a more moderate storm here with the European. But the American model, the GFS, notice there's a pulling and a stretching of the 2, not getting itself organized. And this would be a much lesser storm. So the American model is showing a much lesser storm, it's going to get colder and snow in many areas, but it won't be really much of a storm system. It won't be nearly as impactful. And then as we take a look at these 3 different scenarios, which one's going to win out? And I'll tell you that we're going to just have to get a little bit closer. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get more clarification. Now, let's assume, just for argument's sake, the Canadian and the European model is more correct. This is the type of precipitation pattern you would see. This is from Saturday through Tuesday. So this takes us through Christmas Eve Sunday, Christmas Day Monday, and you can see that the more organized scenario has quite a bit of precipitation. This is also going to be mostly in the form of snow, except down here in the southern and eastern areas where it'll be in the warm sector. But you can see central and southern Wyoming, Nebraska, a large part of Colorado, into the South Dakota area is certainly going to be in a situation to watch out for. And the snow would be impressive as well, Christmas Eve Sunday into Christmas Day Monday. However, the scenario I just showed you is if they come together. If they don't, the snow will be lighter and more scattered. Hopefully, we'll have better confidence for you tomorrow. But in the meantime, I just kind of show you what we're faced with the forecast. But it's Wednesday. Most of this is coming Saturday night into Sunday, so we've got a day or two to get things figured out. Bottom line, if you're going to be traveling from late Saturday Sunday into Monday and even into Tuesday. Just keep monitoring the situation, and we'll keep you abreast on how the system will unfold and come together. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.